All right, today we're going to dig into a really challenging but super important teaching from the Gospel of John. You can think of it as a kind of guide for followers of Jesus on how to live in a world that might not just disagree with them, but could be, well, actively hostile. So let's jump right in.
I want you to just picture the scene for a second. It's Jesus' last night with his disciples. He's just given them this beautiful, really encouraging message about staying connected to him like branches on a vine. So the mood is probably feeling pretty hopeful, right? And then, boom, he just completely pivots. He follows up all that hope with a really stark warning. The world is going to hate you.
And this right here, this is the heart of the whole teaching. It immediately reframes what it feels like to face that kind of opposition. See, according to the text, any hostility a follower might face isn't just random, and it's not even really personal. It's just an extension of a conflict that already exists between the world and Jesus himself, which of course makes you wonder, what exactly does he mean by the world?
Okay, so the source material is really specific about this. The world isn't just a blanket term for every single person who isn't a Christian. Not at all. It's being defined here as a system of values, a kind of cultural programming that's fundamentally at odds with what Jesus teaches. It's described as an entire moral order that's an act of rebellion. And this is where that friction really comes from. On one hand, you've got this worldview where truth is relative, morality is a personal choice, and culture tells you what's right. And on the other, you have a Christian identity that's defined by being connected to Jesus as the one source of absolute truth. The idea here is that if your life is genuinely plugged into the vine, it's just going to look different. And that very difference is what can spark hostility.
So, if this conflict is pretty much baked into the system, what's the game plan? Well, the text doesn't just drop this heavy problem on you. It actually offers a clear three-part framework for how to live right in the middle of that tension. This is where we get into the nuts and bolts, the how-to part of the whole thing.
So the framework is pretty straightforward. It really boils down to three things. Number one, expect hostility. Number two, in spite of that, keep witnessing. And number three, through it all, stay faithful. Let's break each of those down.
The big thing with this first step is all about your mindset. The instruction is to be mentally ready for this, and a huge part of that is to not take the rejection personally. The idea is that the anger or the pushback isn't really aimed at you as an individual. It's a reaction against the message you're carrying.
And this next quote really hammers that point home. Jesus is basically saying, hey, just look at how I was treated. Why would you expect anything different? It sets a really clear precedent. I mean, if the leader was persecuted for his message, it just makes sense that his followers, who are carrying that same message, should expect similar treatment.
Now, this next step seems kind of counterintuitive, right? When you're facing hostility, the instruction isn't to hide or retreat, it's to keep on being a witness. But, and this is a huge but, the teaching gives a critical piece of info. You are not supposed to do this on your own. It's not about gritting your teeth and just trying harder.
And this is how that impossible task becomes possible. Jesus promises that even though he's about to leave, he won't leave his followers all by themselves. He's going to send a helper, the Holy Spirit, to be with them and give them the power they need. This is the resource that makes step two actually doable.
So the text describes this as a partnership. It's a two-part action. First, the helper, the Spirit, does the work of bearing witness. Then, empowered by that same Spirit, the follower also bears witness. See? It's a team effort, not a solo performance.
Okay, so the final step is to stay faithful. And what's so fascinating is the reason Jesus gives this whole warning in the first place. He literally says, I'm telling you all this now to keep you from falling away. It's a preemptive move. The warning isn't meant to scare them, it's meant to prepare them so that when the tough times do come, they don't think it's a sign that God has failed or abandoned them.
Theory is great and all, but what does this actually look like in real life? Well, the source material points us to this powerful story from the book of Acts, where we get to see Jesus' disciples, Peter and John, living out this three-part framework just perfectly.
So let's set the scene. It's only been a few weeks since the crucifixion. Peter and John are right back in Jerusalem, and they come face to face with the exact same religious authorities who engineered Jesus' death. I mean, the stakes could not possibly be higher. This is a life or death situation.
The whole confrontation kicks off after Peter and John heal a man who couldn't walk. The leaders are furious, and they drag them in and demand to know, by what power did you do this? This is it. This is the moment of truth. They can be vague, try to save their own skin, or they can be a faithful witness. And they absolutely choose to be faithful witnesses. Instead of dodging the question, Peter looks them in the eye and directly confronts them. He says, "The healing was done in the name of the very man you crucified, whom God then raised from the dead." It is a direct, bold, and just an incredibly dangerous answer.
So the leaders, totally enraged, order them to stop talking about Jesus. Period. And their response? It just perfectly captures that whole idea of staying faithful. They basically say, look, you can decide if it's right to obey you or to obey God. But as for us, we can't stop. We have to talk about what we've personally seen and heard.
So let's just quickly recap the framework we've been talking about. First, expect hostility, but get that it's not actually personal. Second, keep being a witness, but lean on that promised helper for the strength to do it. And finally, stay faithful, remembering that the warning was meant to prepare you, not to discourage you.
And that really leaves us with a final, pretty tough question to think about. This whole framework, it's not an easy path. The story of Peter and John and Jesus' own words make it crystal clear that being a faithful witness often comes with a very real cost. It kind of forces us to ask ourselves, what does it truly mean to share what we've seen and heard, especially when doing so might cost us something?